Well, it's my honor to introduce to you Mr. Kevin Rogers. He's been with us since Friday night. He has been such a blessing to us. There's more about him in the bulletin. He wrote all of that, only made some of it up, but no, I'm kidding. But he has been a blessing, and what I want to say to him in front of you is, sir, thank you for caring for our church as we have come alongside of you to partner. It has truly been a privilege, and the testimonies that come back from those weeks in Bear Branch is such a blessing. So thank you. God bless you.
It truly is an honor to be here today. I'm humbled by this opportunity to share here. And I watch the videos and look at these people who are in these places. They're in India, they're in Vietnam, they're in all these different countries, and it requires such a huge step of faith to move from the comforts of this place to places like that. And I'm one of those guys who's a little bit insecure at times, all the time. And I compare myself, which is not a healthy thing to do, I know, but I compare myself and I look at these guys on the video and I look at these families on the video and I think of what they're doing in these places. And I compare myself and say, wow, they moved from here all the way over there. And then I stand up and Pastor Greg pats me on the back, thanking me for the fact that I moved from Tennessee to Kentucky.
It's a big deal, brother.
No. The only difference is I bleed orange and they bleed blue. And I can't, and y'all bleed, what color do y'all bleed up here? Green. Y'all need some therapy. There's a lot of dissension in this body, a lot of anger and hurt, and Jesus can set you free. But I look at the sacrifices I have made, and they don't seem that great. But the truth is this, even just giving you a part of my little teeny tiny testimony, even the move for me from the comforts of Knoxville, Tennessee to Bear Branch, Kentucky, it was hard. It was hard. And oftentimes as God calls us to move, as God calls us to do something, and for every one of us that something is different, as God calls us to do something, it can be very hard. For me, I was very happy where I was. I had a lawn mowing business growing up and gave up my lawn mowing business to take a job at a church that would actually pay me enough to not mow yards. I was at hold on, don't judge me too much, but I was at the First Baptist Church. Not First Baptist Church, the First Baptist Church. Or at least they thought they were the First Baptist. Man, they had money, so much money. And the people there were loaded. And I'm not going to lie, they paid me pretty well. I liked that benefits package they offered me. I loved the comforts of that church. I loved all the stuff that came with the job. I had an incredible group of students. Love them to death. We had a worship band in our student ministry. They were amazing. A couple of them went on to go to Belmont University and major in music. They're worship leaders. And it was mind-blowing what I had there. I loved holding on to it. And after 6 years at that church, God, for those 6 years, had been growing this mission trip to Bear Branch, Kentucky. And our students were going to Bear Branch. And part of the growth of our student ministry was that mission trip. We took 30 students that first year and over 6 years at that First Baptist Church. After 6 years, we were taking all of our teenagers on that mission trip, plus 650 people from other churches on that mission trip. And God began to move me And I began to sense the call to move from the comforts of that church to go and take that week-long mission trip and make something more of it. And I began to sense God saying, Kevin, leave the church, go to Kentucky, and make this mission trip thing year-round. Those people need it. God was working, and I wasn't listening. I didn't want to go because I liked my paycheck. I liked my students. I liked the notoriety that I had in the community because I was the youth pastor at where? The First Baptist Church. And you know, when anybody had questions in the community, who were they calling? Because I was the youth ministry pro. I had the biggest youth group, blah, blah, blah. I tell you all this because my arrogance got in my way of following my God. Because I looked at myself thinking I was something special, and they needed me there at that church. God said, go. And I made excuses. No, ain't no paycheck up there in Kentucky. There wasn't a paycheck up there in Kentucky. There was nothing, not even an organization, not even a building. And I said, God, there's not even a building. There's no paycheck. How are we going to do this? Well, then I got a phone call from the superintendent of schools who said, hey, Kevin, would you be interested in a closed down school? Because that school you've been going to for your mission trip, we're shutting it down like now. We can't afford to keep it open anymore. We're moving those kids to another school. He said, and the superintendent asked me if I would be interested in a school building to maybe do missions year round. And I said, no. I don't want that. And I keep on my merry little way at the church doing my little thing. The pastor calls me into his office one day. He said, Kevin, where's your heart? And I said, my heart is right here. I love my church. I love my students. I love the ministry that we're doing. I love it. He said, then why is it all you talk about is Big Creek? And I said, no, I talk about a lot of stuff. And I could tell you story after story after how God was trying to move me there to do something, and I was sitting in my comfortable place, making excuses to my God, not moving, and doing what He wanted me to do. Ultimately, through a series of amazing things that happened where God showed me it was time, and through some challenging things that happened at the First Baptist Church. You know how churches can be sometimes. They're fun. But God made it clear. And ultimately, I gave up on the excuses and I just said, okay, it's time. The church was incredibly generous to me. They paid me for 6 full months to get rid of me. To send me off. They sent me. They took great care of me. And during that time, I began the process of trying to sense where God was leading. How are we going to do this? What are we going to do? And I wasn't totally sure, but all I knew every day was one day at a time. I was just going to try to follow Jesus that day. And He figured it all out. And here we are 12 years later. God has done an incredible work at Big Creek Missions. We are, very simply, our school building is like a hotel for missionaries. We're in an area of Kentucky that's one of the top 10 poorest counties in the country. There's a lot of poverty, a lot of hurt, a lot of drug use, a lot of broken families, a lot of needs. That's why we are there. The churches in that area don't have the resources nor the desire, really, to reach out to their community. And God has put us there so that we can fill in the gap during this time. So what we do is we find churches and groups just like yours all throughout the year to come to our area and serve. And yes, we ask our groups to bring a small donation with them to help us cover the expenses that we incur to pay for your mission trip, to feed you, to house you, to buy the construction materials, and to do all the work of ministry while you're in Kentucky. That's what we do. And it works. lives are being impacted, hearts are being changed because, well, God moved me, and finally I was willing to say go. And now, thousands of others, like some of yours, how many of y'all been to Big Creek before? Okay, good number of you. God has moved you too to make a difference in our community. But my question to all of you today is this. When God says go, or when God says give, when God says to do something, what is your response going to be? Are you going to be like me and make a bunch of excuses and try to talk your way out of it? Are you going to blame other people? Are you just simply going to be obedient and go? This morning we're going to be in the Gospel of John. All throughout the weekend, I've been talking about this miracle of a lame man being able to walk. The last 2 nights I talked about Peter and John, how they were used by Jesus to give a man the ability to get up and walk. And this morning we're talking about a different man who Jesus gave the ability to walk. John chapter 4. Turn with me, if you would. I'm kidding. John 5. John 5. It was Acts chapter 4, John chapter 5. Jesus and his disciples were walking along. John chapter 5, verse 1. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. And there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. And let me give you a little bit of background here. There's a place called Bethesda, the place of mercy, where there are porches surrounding this pool. And there were a great number of disabled people who laid around the pool. It was believed at that time that the first person, when the pool was stirred, something happened in that pool. We don't know exactly what happened in that pool, but it was believed that the first person to hop in the pool after that water bubbled would be healed of their affliction. And every time that water would bubble, all those disabled people, all those sick people would run to that pool seeking a healing from that pool. That's the simple thing. We don't know what was happening. Now, there must have been something good about that water because people kept jumping in it, hoping for a healing, but they were jumping in the pool. That was the belief, that if you were the first in, you're going to get a healing. Friends, this story is going to teach us something today. That in order to receive a miracle from Jesus or a move from Jesus, we don't have to be first. We don't have to be the best. We don't have to be first in line. We just simply have to listen to him and be obedient for him to move us and to make a difference in our lives. So we continue reading just a little bit more. Verse 2 again, there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda. It is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. And here a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. Now, again, when the water stirred, what happens? They run to the pool. Great news if you've got a sinus infection, because you can just jump up and move, right? It's easy. Great news if you've got an ear infection or if you've got a hand that's not feeling well. You can jump up and move. But there was a man there by that pool who didn't have that ability to get up and move. Why? Because he was paralyzed. He was incapable of moving himself from where he was to where the water was. He couldn't do it. Verse 5, one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. 38 years. This man had been an invalid. unable to move himself from one place to another. And it's very likely he relied on other people constantly to move him where he was going. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" Okay, I'm not a really smart guy. Sometimes I have a glimmer of brightness up here in my brain. It goes, pop. When I hear that question, here's the invalid, the paralyzed guy who could not move. And up walks Jesus, who I can't help but think that they knew who Jesus was, because word was traveling around these communities. Jesus was walking around. People were hearing, there's this guy walking around. He's really special. There's something about him that's different. And Jesus walks up to this man, and he looks at him. And he knows he's been an invalid for 38 years because he's Jesus. And he says, "Do you want to get well?" In my opinion, if I were that invalid guy, and Jesus looks at me and says, "Do you want to get well?" what's my answer going to be? Yes. Please. Yes. Now. I'm ready. Gimme. I want to move. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yes? Makes sense to me. Okay, I'm making sure that my brightness thing is working today. But something happens here. Verse 7, the invalid replies. Isn't it sad, though, that this guy is referred to as the invalid? I would hate to be written into the Bible called the invalid. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Verse 7, "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred." Oh, guess what he does? He blames other people. I'm not, Jesus, I want to get well, but those other people, they are not helping me get well. They should be helping me get well. They should be helping me get from here to there, but nobody's helping me. And then he says, when I'm trying to get in, somebody else goes down ahead of me. There's always somebody in my way. There's always something in my way. The man was asked by Jesus, "Do you want to get well?" And what does he do? He makes excuses. And he blames others for his inability to be made well. And little did he know, the one he was talking to had all the ability to give him the ability to walk. He didn't trust Jesus enough to answer him and just simply say, yes. He doubted and said, well, those other people are in my way and nobody else is helping me. Jesus, verse 8, says to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." I kind of hear it. I don't know, okay? I'm just saying this. My mama, I go back to growing up. I love my mama. My mama she's still around. My mama's a strong lady, to say the least. And growing up, there were times when I was sick, wasn't feeling too well. Sunday morning, it's time for church. And I'd wake up and Mom would say, "Kevin, it's time to go to church." And I say, "But Mama, my stomach's not feeling good." She said, "Get up, we're going to church." "Mom, I don't feel well. I'm tired." Get up and go. It's time to go. Now, perhaps I'm wrong here, but when Jesus says this, perhaps there is a bit of power behind this in saying, it's time to move. You have laid here long enough in your invalid state on your comfortable little mat. Get up, pick up your mat and walk. And I know there is mixed in with that powerful word. There's grace, there's love, all mixed in with the way he was saying and the reason he was saying it. But sometimes we need to be addressed by Jesus with that power, saying, get up, pick up your mat and walk. Move. Don't be sitting around. Verse 9. At once, not 5 minutes later, not 25 minutes later, not 3 days later. At once, this man was cured. And he picked up his mat and he walked. Can you picture this? Man who had been an invalid for 38 years. His muscles had atrophied. There was nothing there. No ability in and of himself to get up and pick up his mat and walk. None. I'm not a medical person. Like I said, I'm not all that bright. Any medical people here, if you don't use your muscles for 38 years, what's going to happen to them? They're going to atrophy or die away. They ain't going to be there. But at once, somehow, Jesus, by the power of his word, says, get up. And at once, his muscles are strong enough and powerful enough to move. And he gets up, he picks up his mat, and what does he do? He walks. The day on which this took place, this is verse 9. The day this took place was on the Sabbath. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, oh my, here we go. The Jews said to the man who had been healed, excuse me, sir. Excuse me. I'm trying to pull out my First Baptist voice. I didn't say that out loud, did I? Excuse me, sir, but today is the Sabbath day, and the law forbids you to carry your mat on the Sabbath. So you need to put it down. Just stop. Don't, because the law, The man replied. I love this. The man replied, the man who made me well again told me to pick up my mat and walk. And you're telling me I can't pick up my mat. But the man who made me well again told me to pick up my mat and walk. So what did he do? He did only that which he knew to do, which was to pick up his mat and walk. Of course, people around him were like, that don't make no sense. That's against the culture. That's against the regulations. That's against the rules. You don't want to do that because it doesn't make any sense to the rest of us. But the man who made me well again told me to pick up my mat and walk, and all I know to do, I've been able to walk for 38 years. You're complaining about the fact I'm carrying a mat? What's wrong with you people? The man who made me well again told me to pick up my mat and walk. So I'm going to pick up my mat and I'm going to start walking. And of course, the religious folks say, who was it? Who told you to do this? The man had no idea that it was Jesus. But later, Jesus comes to him and Jesus says, I am Jesus. And of course, that man believes. He believes. He believes. Because Jesus gave him the ability to do something he never thought he could ever do, which was walk. For so many years, he'd been laying there hopelessly waiting for something to happen in his life. And nothing was happening. And then Jesus walks in and gives him the ability to do something incredible. And he steps up. He picks up his mat and he walks. And my question for you today is this. It's very simple. What mat of excuses are you laying on right now that's keeping you from going and giving to your God? What mat of excuses are you laying on right now? Now, there's an offering that you can give to that will support people. There are places you can go to serve. But I truly believe you and I, in a lot of ways, are a lot alike. And we want to make excuses to our God when he says to get up and move. I know many of y'all are moving. Many of you all are serving. You are giving the best you can, the most you can to your God. And I understand that. But keep listening. There's some of us out here. Our Jesus is telling you, hey, get up. Get up out of that place you've been sitting for so long. Get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Walk. Where does he want you to walk? For me, it wasn't very far, just from Tennessee to Kentucky. Not too hard. Well, it's been hard in a lot of ways, I'll promise you that. For those people in the videos, it was a lot farther walk. There's some very challenging situations. But this is the beautiful thing about our Jesus. When he says to get up and pick up our mat and walk, what does he give us the ability to do? Get up, pick up our mat and walk. And Jesus may say to you, I want you to go here. I want you to do this. I want you to go there. I want you to do that. And if we make the excuse to our Jesus, but I can't, he's like, you're right. You can't. But I have given you the ability to get up and to move. He gives it to you. He takes the deadness that is in your life and he gives you life and the ability to move. We just simply have to listen and be obedient. He says, get up, walk. We can't lay on our excuses anymore. What are our excuses? I know what mine were. I like my job. I like the money. I like where I'm living. I like the notoriety of my life. I like this. This is comfortable. But Jesus said, don't want you there anymore. I want you over here. It's hard. I made all the excuses. Money really was a big one. Money's always a big one with a lot of us. We're afraid to give to God because we think that if I give to God, I'm not going to have money to do all this other stuff over here. I truly believe that if we would be obedient to our God, he would help us realign our finances in a way that would glorify him. Might not be eating Chick-fil-A quite as much. Instead of buying Oreo cookies, you might buy the off-brand Kroger cookies. Save $1.50 a package, they're almost as good. You might realign your priorities and find that you can do what he wants you to do because he gives you the ability to do it. You might be able to go where he wants you to go because he gives you the ability to do it. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. Ephesians chapter 1 says that we have been given every spiritual blessing in Christ. Every spiritual blessing. When he calls us to go, when he calls us to give, when he calls us to move, what we must realize is he gives us what is needed according to his design. He gives us what is needed to go do what he wants us to do. And yes, he will oftentimes test our faith. He will put us in challenging times so that we will depend on him. And yes, there may be times where we stumble. There may be times when we are weak, but we have to remember he gives us the ability to walk. So when God calls you, when God moves you, when God gives you a vision to do something that would bring glory to him, are you going to sit around making excuses, laying around on your little mat, watching other people reap God's blessings? Or are you going to get up and pick up your mat and walk? What's it look like for you? I don't know. What is God's call on your life? I do not know. But what I do know is this. When he calls you to do that thing he has in store for you, Listen to him and trust him, because he will work it out. It might be sacrificial giving at this point. It may very well be sacrificial living at another point, where he's calling you to give up something, to move somewhere, to serve him and them. There's a world that is broken, a world that is dying, that is hopeless, that is lost. They need to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. And how can they hear if we don't go and walk out these doors and preach and share and love and extend the grace of Jesus Christ? If we're sitting, they're not hearing. What is your destination? Where you need to be walking to? Well, I think it's real simple. We just get up and start walking somewhere. Somewhere. I don't know the final destination. I don't know if Kentucky is my final destination. I sure hope not. It's so redneck down there. I don't know where I love where I am right now. I really do. But I sure do wish God would call me to a beachfront ministry in somewhere. But I don't know where God's ultimately going to take me. But when people ask me, Kevin, where are you going? What are you doing? I don't know. The man who made me well again told me to pick up my mat and follow him to Kentucky. So that's where I am. The man who made you well again told you to wake up tomorrow morning, go to work, and serve him at work. The man who made you well again told you to wake up tomorrow morning and go to school and serve him at school. Be a missionary at your school. The man who made you well again told you to do your little Pampered Chef party and be a missionary right there too. There's a Pampered Chef. What is it? Do y'all do candle parties? Norwex? How many Norwexers? We love our Norwex. I'll pray for you people. But the truth is, where is God calling you to serve? It's there. It's not about making money with that little thing you do. It's not about just getting an education at that school you go to. It's about very simply getting up, picking up your mat. Quit making excuses for keeping your mouth shut about Jesus. Quit making excuses for not being obedient to him. Pick up your mat, keep it with you, and start walking. Where do I go? What do I do? What do I say? I don't have the answers exactly for you, except to talk about Jesus and tell people, everything I do, I'm just picking up my mat and walking and following Jesus one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. I told you guys I'm from Tennessee. I love Tennessee. Don't like their football team right now, but that's okay. Used to, we had good sports in Tennessee. We had quality sports. We had a coach down there. Her name was Pat Summitt. Y'all ever heard of Pat Summitt before? She's legendary. She was a house. Literally, the whole town just worshiped Pat Summitt, loved her so very much because just her demeanor, the passion she had for her sport was incredible. Unfortunately, early onset Alzheimer's kicked in, took her way too soon. She passed away 3 years ago in July. Heartbreaking time for us Tennessee people because we loved Pat Summitt. But at her memorial service, I was at that service and I was watching some of the players get up and tell stories of Pat Summitt. Oftentimes in the challenging game, the players would be frustrated. They'd be angry with each other. They would be frustrated with the coaches. They'd be frustrated with the other team because they couldn't hit the basket the way they wanted to. They couldn't dribble. They couldn't do anything together. Their team was falling apart. They were struggling and they were frustrating. And they said that Coach Pat would huddle them up with the fire in her eyes. And I don't know if you know Pat Summitt, but when she got angry, her eyes just lit on fire. And she would look at her players and she would say, left foot, right foot, breathe. Sounds dumb, doesn't it? Here's the winningest coach in NCAA history. The winningest coach. She is like, has anybody beat her yet? I think somebody may have beat her, but she has won more games of any coach of any sport in NCAA history. And she says something really simple to her players. Left foot, right foot, breathe. What does that mean to her players? They know all this fancy stuff. And a lot of times in the Christian world, we know so much theology. We know so much of the Bible. We can quote it front to back, back to front. We know all the intricacies and the ins and out of the Bible. And we're so proud of ourselves for knowing all this stuff. But you know what we're doing? We're sitting on our rear ends just soaking up the Bible, and we're not doing anything with it. And I truly believe that He is calling us to know His Word, to put His Word into action also. And we have to do the simple things in life. We have to do the simple things so that we're obedient to Him. And the winningest coach in NCAA history looks at her players and says, you've got to get the simple things right. Get up, put your left foot forward, and put your right foot forward. And breathe. Just breathe. Breathe. Left foot, right foot, and breathe. For you and I, tomorrow morning, heck, today, when we get up out of this sanctuary, where are we going? What are we doing? How are we going to serve our God? I don't know exactly. But very simply, by faith, and as an act of worship, you take your left foot. Just take your foot. Come on. Put it down. There you go. Say, Jesus, lead me. You take your left foot. You put your right foot down. Jesus, lead me. Breathe, O breath of God. Just breathe your power and your life in me. That is it. Left foot, right foot, breathe. We can't sit down any longer. Our world is hurting. Our people are hurting. People are dying every single day. We must move. We must move. We must give. We must go. It's simple. Get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Where are you walking? I don't know. All I know is the one who made me well again, Jesus, told me to get up and pick up my mat and walk. Well, how do I walk? Real simple. In obedience, 1 foot at a time, 1 step at a time. Left foot, right foot. Breathe. You may not know the final destination. You may not know where you're going to end up, but I hope that you will just sit up and realize that Jesus is calling you to get up and go. Serve Him at home. Serve Him at work. Serve Him at school. Preach His gospel. Preach His word. And give sacrificially every time you have an opportunity. And do not pass up any opportunity to tell people about this Jesus who has taken you from your invalid state. You know, I was dead once, and He brought my heart to life. And when people ask me why I do what I do, because the man who made me well again told me to do what I'm doing. And that's why I'm doing it. I don't know why I'm giving all this money. It don't make no sense to me either. But Jesus told me to do it. I don't know why I'm moving over to that country. It don't make sense to me. It don't make sense to you. Don't make sense to nobody. But Jesus told me to pick up my mat and walk and to go there. So 1 step at a time. Does it make sense to you? It's simple. Get up your mat. Get up. Pick up your mat and walk 1 step at a time. Baby steps. Follow Him in obedience and glorify His name. I hope you will continue to give sacrificially. Those missionaries are so thankful. I am thankful for your support every 2 years when you come down to Big Creek. You help keep us alive. And without groups like yours, we couldn't do what we're doing. We thank you for that giving. Don't stop giving. don't stop going. If you haven't been going and giving, today's your day. Get up, open that wallet, and write a check. Give to your God, and He will bless you. He will take you places you never thought you could go, both spiritually and physically. Trust Him. So thankful for this opportunity. Your churches are phenomenal. Your pastors are wonderful. I pray God's blessings on you and that He will continue to draw you closer together for His glory and for the benefit of the people in this community. May He be glorified in the life of this church. Now, I'm sure we got to sing songs or do something and pray, whatever, but after we pray and sing and do that church stuff, we're going to be getting up, picking up our mats and walking. And those people you see, you tell them why you're walking. You tell them why you're going where you're going and why you're giving what you're giving. It's all about Jesus. All about Jesus. Left foot, right foot, breathe. I thank you, Father, for the beautiful truth of your word. And I pray that somehow I was able to communicate it clearly today and simply today so that all of us can just simply do whatever it is you're calling us to do. May you, O Lord, be glorified in our every step. May you, O Lord, be glorified in our every word. And may we give sacrificially to you, no longer making excuses for money or job or comfort, whatever. May we give all that we have to you, trusting that you can give us what we need to make it step by step, day by day, every single day. Praise you, Father, for all you've done and all you're going to do. In Jesus' name.